All right, good evening again, everyone. Thank you again for being here, and this is my favorite part of the evening is a conversation with a friend and a legend. And what I would like to do, is, and I said this to Mike as we came up, the people sitting at our table right there with Mike know his entire business journey, right? But not everybody in this room fully understands that. We'll hear a little bit about that tomorrow in the video, Mike, but maybe why don't we start with that, right? Your journey through MedTech, where you started, how you ended up with Edwards, and sort of the path for you there. So walk us through that. Why MedTech? Why did you get in it? And where did it lead you to?
Sure. So I graduated as a chemical engineer, and I didn't really know what chemical engineers did till I graduated, and I found out that they work in oil refineries and chemical plants. And so I worked for Union Carbide making Presto and antifreeze, and did that for about 5 years. And I was good at it, right? So, but it wasn't the most fulfilling job going. And so you get a little bored. I went to business school in the evenings at Rutgers at the time, and I met some of these folks working in this medical technology business, and it sounded exciting. They were investing and innovating, and it just sounded fantastic. And so I looked around and interviewed with a few companies and joined Baxter as a manufacturing engineer. I was intimidated at the time because I was really nervous about coming into healthcare and not knowing anything about it. But Baxter was kind of a meritocracy, and if you got something done, they gave you more to do. And I just sort of grew up there. So I started sort of in manufacturing engineering, went into product development, and from there, early on, got a general management job. And I had kind of a common theme through my career, which is they gave me things that really were not important. And one thing good about getting things that aren't important is, they give a young person big responsibility because you can't screw it up. It's, it's not growing, it's not going anywhere. You can't really make it worse. Yeah. And so, if you just kind of assembled a team and did something, you got improvement. Right. So I had the benefit of doing that, and I had a lot of experiences at Baxter, and it was great. They probably moved me around too much. Yeah. It was great. I gained a lot of experience that way, but it probably wasn't good for the businesses that I was running. Yeah. And then I took responsibility for the cardiovascular business that had come with a merger that they had done with American Hospital Supply. And I was managing that for probably about 5 years, and it was going nowhere. And to be in the cardiovascular business in the 90s and not be growing was hard to do. I mean, everybody was cooking. Medtronic was growing, Guidance growing, St. Jude, everybody's cooking. We're going nowhere, and after very careful analysis, there's no innovation, right? And so made a pitch during one of the strategy sessions and said, you know what, this has to change. There's 3 paths we could take. We can stop contributing to the mothership and really start pumping money into this cardiovascular business. We could merge with some other successful cardiovascular company, and we mentioned Boston Scientific and St. Jude at the time, and they would have been bite-sized for Baxter. And the third one was to exit. So this was maybe 10% of Baxter, and it was the poorest performing part of Baxter. Yeah. So the idea that they were going to feed their loser and starve their winners was not going to go anywhere. Yeah. There was a new CEO. He certainly wasn't interested in acquiring more cardiovascular businesses. There's one that wasn't doing well. So Baxter had success with spinoffs, and I raised my hand and said I'd love to do that. And we started fresh with Edwards Life Sciences.
So let me ask you, why did you raise your hand? What was it about the opportunity to spin that out that was so intriguing to you?
Yeah, I fell in love with the cardiovascular business. It just felt like a comfortable pair of shoes to me. The other businesses of Baxter that I was associated with, we made millions of this and millions of that. And in cardiovascular business, it was an each's business. And there were patients every day that would, get wheeled into an operating room or a cath lab. And your real performance, showed you got feedback. Right. And that was gratifying to me. I felt that early on. So it was a meaningful opportunity, and it felt like a good opportunity. Yeah. Now, there were really good companies there, and we were not in the category with the really good companies, and so we had a lot of work to do.
Yeah. So talk about the work you did to make it from not a really good company to what ended up being an unbelievably great company, Mike,
Yeah,
under your
well,
leadership.
it wasn't a straight line. We sort of bounced around. We tried a lot of things. We were talking about it at our table earlier. We did these blue ocean exercises of where is the growth going to be in the future, and I would, it was like, oh, treating AFib is going to be big. Treating peripheral vascular disease is going to be big. And we went through the various opportunities, and we were placing small bets in each one of those, which were going nowhere. We thought about being a biotech company and doing angiogenesis, growing new vessels instead of replacing, instead of a stent or a balloon. And so we tried a lot of things, but it was when this idea came along that we could maybe replace a heart valve with a catheter, that it got really interesting, and we decided to place a big bet there, and that turned out to be transformational. And we actually focused ourselves, and we got out of a bunch of businesses that didn't have bright futures and focused on something that we thought could really make a difference, and it was a joy after that.
What was the process from a business standpoint and a leadership standpoint that led you to make that decision, to put it all in on TAVR and make sure it worked? And how much risk did you feel there? Were you worried about it? Were you super confident in it? How did you feel?
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought I was worried, but it was kind of balanced. Linda told me that, I came home and said, I bet the company today,
Yeah.
which I think is a little exaggeration, but.
Not to her, by the way, because she told me that again tonight. Yeah.
No, but it felt right. When you had a chance to actually see a heart valve replaced with open heart surgery,
Right.
and what the patient went through compared to what it's like to have a heart valve replaced with a catheter.
Right.
And instantly they have their blood flow restored and they turn pink, and they didn't have the assault associated with open heart surgery along with it, and they were feeling great in a day. It was remarkable, and
Yeah.
that stuck with you and
Yeah.
said, we got to make this happen.
Yeah. There's I came to your office, I guess it was 8 or 9 years ago now, Mike, for the first time I visited Edwards. There was a sign on your desk that said it's about the patient, stupid. And I think that to some degree was taken from a political comment about it's the economy, stupid, right? But it was really the patient that motivated you more than anything else. And that sign is a small example of trying to instill that, I think, in the entire Edwards community. And that's what you led with, right?
Yeah, it didn't happen overnight. When the things that we were celebrating back in the old days at Baxter, we'd celebrate and hitting the budget and making the plan and hitting the milestone and those kind of things, but those weren't really inspirational. They didn't really touch people's soul,
Yeah.
and so forth. And I really did a lot of thinking and searching about, what is it, where is it? And ultimately we landed on it is the patient. And it's kind of, people talk about, catering to your customer, but it's kind of your customer's customer, if you will,
Right.
the ultimate customer. And that blossomed over the years. And I didn't probably realize how powerful that was until we had a chance to live it for a while and watch it through the eyes of our employees. Like, it was a wow experience.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to instill that sort of cultural principle about the patient throughout the entire Edwards community?
20 years. No,
Yeah.
it took a while. It grew naturally. We were fortunate. We were making heart valves, and each heart valve is serial numbered. And then as a patient, you got a little card for your wallet that said, but if you actually came and visited us, then we could introduce you to the people that actually sewed your valve,
Right.
and inspected your valve. And you would watch those reunions and having patients throw their arms around our folks and say, thank you for saving my life. And it was breathtaking.
Yeah.
And it's like, we have to bottle that. That's magic.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
When did that come to you, about connecting the patient to the people who actually were creating the heart valve?
Well, it became apparent, but the challenge after that was like, okay, so how do you make that, how do you bring it alive? And
Right.
how do you make it real for everybody? And how do you make sure it's not just, the people that are in the field that get a chance to see what it's like for a patient, but the people that are working in accounting or working in manufacturing,
Right.
or whatever they're working. And so that became an art form. So we got pretty good at storytelling.
Yeah.
We would tell patient stories. So we'd make short videos, vignettes, that would be maybe 5-6 minute long. It would start out with, here's the patient's life, here's what they went through, here's the circle that they were really having a tough time. They end up having a procedure. They were doing great again. Thank you very much, employees of Edwards, for changing my life.
Yeah.
And we would go out of our way. Ultimately, it started out as an expense, and it ended up being we never would end a meeting without a patient story.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
There's a picture in the video that we have, which we'll run to tomorrow, of you and a young boy, a boy that you were hugging. A beautiful picture, big smiles. There it is, right, on both of your faces. Can you tell the story of this young boy and why it touched you so much?
Yeah, that's Matthias. So as we were talking before, the idea was to bring this alive, and at headquarters in Irvine and U.S. meetings and so forth, we had all these patient stories that we had developed. But when I went out to visit the facilities out around the world, and you played those same videos, it inspired them to some extent, but not the same. Yeah. And you realize, watching a story about an American didn't mean the same thing if you were in Brazil or you were in Australia or you were in Japan. You wanted to see your patients.
Right.
And so we decided that we were really going to try and make that come alive. So one of my visits to Costa Rica, we asked the team, see if you could find, talk to the local docs, see if they have a patient that might be willing to be interviewed on stage. And they did. And so one of my visits, I met this young kid, and he's 10, 11 years old. His surgeon was there, and his mom and dad were there. And he had he was born with a heart defect, had surgery when he was an infant, and then 10 years later, he had a replacement with one of our valves. And it really wasn't designed for that purpose.
Right.
And it was a great story. We interviewed him on stage, and this little guy, he got up in front of the crowd, and it was, twice, 3 times this big a group, just hundreds of people, and he just started talking to them about his experience and how good he felt and how much he wanted to thank from the bottom of his heart. And he had the audience eating out of his hand, and wow, who is this dude? Right. So anyway, I fell in love with the guy. We exchanged information and so forth. Well, anyway, a few years later when I was retiring, I was doing a kind of a tour again back through the facilities, and went to Costa Rica, and they surprised me by having Matty and his parents there, and that was a picture of the reunion.
How old is he now?
Right now he's probably 15, 16 years old, but I say he's going to be the future president of Costa Rica.
Is that right?
He's something else.
What an amazing story. Yeah. That's a great picture, and I think, Mike, if you look at that picture, the thing that strikes me about it is the joy that you see in that boy's face, but also the joy I see in your face, right? That what you've done is touched a life in a way that not everybody can sort of feel and experience. And as I've watched your career, right, one of the things that has always stuck out to me is your ability to be a great leader, driven to be very successful with your company, but somehow always joyful about leading your company as well, right? And talk about that, right? I know it's not that simple and not that easy, but you did exude this happiness and joy about your job. And I think all of us can kind of learn some lessons from that.
It's a combination of gummies and blue suede shoes, right? You get those and you're going to be joyful, I assure you, right?
I don't know. I think it takes more than that for me. But.
No, I mean, I was a relatively big picture guy.
Yeah.
And when you sort of think about what the chance, I think about the life that I've had a chance to live, and unbelievable family and fabulous friends, and so many, for example, on an evening like this, have a job that you love, know that you were helping patients. I mean, the whole thing is how cool is that? And to let small things ever stand in the way of that would just be wrong.
Yeah. And you've led amazingly your company. I think if you talk to the people who've worked at Edwards, they've experienced as well. There's another picture in the video of you standing in front, I don't know of how many of your employees, but a lot of your employees. You've all got on red, must have been Heart Day of some type. Everybody's got a gigantic smile. And if you look at that picture, it just feels like that culture of joy and happiness kind of flowed through the entire organization. Was that intentional as you thought about it, or was it more organic and natural?
Yeah, that was a patient day, and it was just another example of our folks just loving what they did, and the joy that came to each of them personally, knowing that they made a difference in people's lives. And, it did put a smile on their face. It was something they went home with and had real pride in it. It was meaningful to them.
Yeah. It does.
And so all we did was just give them the opportunity to see the truth.
Yeah. The other thing I enjoy about you, Mike, is your humility, because that doesn't just happen, right? Yeah. It requires a leader who has that type of mentality, that type of joyful approach, and passes that, I think, into your entire organization. And we've all seen that too. I think if you look at everybody in this room, they look at you and your leadership and how you led out Edwards in a way that lifted the whole company, and it was impressive.
Yeah, it was a privilege for me. I mean, that group at Edwards was pretty fantastic.
Yeah. And you made a big difference.
They made me look good.
Yeah. You've now shifted your focus since you retired to philanthropy, right? So let's spend a little bit of time talking about that. What are you doing now? Sort of what are you focused on in your passions?
Yeah, so, we feel very fortunate to be able to give back, and Linda and I have been doing this for a while. We found out once we started dating, we both had older brothers with Down syndrome, and that really became an important group that we were focused on, especially with healthcare. But so we did that, and we made contributions in the community, but never really could do it right, because really doing philanthropy right is a full-time job. And I didn't have the bandwidth to do that in my old work. And so once we retired, pretty much did a 100% pivot to a foundation. And we were fortunate enough to have a foundation at this point. It's all around healthcare, and particularly innovation in healthcare, and with a couple of underserved groups, or deserving groups, if you will. And this is healthcare for Down syndrome individuals, because they really deserve some specialized care, and those born with a congenital heart defect. And that actually is going to be the bulk of our focus. We're really going to really throw all of our resources behind going at that one.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit more. Why that? Why does it matter so much to you? And what's your vision for your foundation and how you can change congenital heart disease going forward?
Yeah, so we haven't quite launched it yet. We're very close to doing that. We call it the Mussallem Congenital Heart Defect Alliance, because we know this is, do you all know, if there's one thing about healthcare, it's a team sport. And so building alliances are so important. But we really have this thought that that's a group of patients that really, really needs transformation. Yeah. Today, there's not many hospitals that really do that well, maybe 1%. And if you're not seeing a lot of these kids, and each one of these, it's surprisingly large. We think of it as small, but it's like 1 out of 100 births has some kind of a heart defect. Some of them are very minor, some of them are very profound, and everything in between, and the kids are kind of snowflakes. And they're not well served today, and we as the royal we really haven't made many tools for those doctors. They're MacGyvers, they're out there grabbing things for other parts of the hospital and try and make it go. And it could be and should be so much better. So we're really putting our head down on that one. We're building that. Matter of fact, we have a president of the alliance. Are you out there, Oren? Raise your hand. Yeah, thanks. You can find Oren.
Oren, stand up so we can see you there.
Thank
Oren,
you.
yeah. So talk about Oren and what he's doing for you. Linda and I talked a little bit about that earlier.
Yeah, so we're in the process of organizing our work and building a team. And Oren has a long history. He was most recently doing the outsourcing of all the technology out of Columbia University. And so he has some good, deep experience and has a personal connection as well. But right now, we're sort of taking a kind of a business-like approach to say, okay, how do we transform this space? And so we have some very specific things that we want to get done. So what if you had a global patient database that had longitudinal information in it and also had some genetic information in it, so that you could really deeply study that and that all researchers could get their arms around that? What if you had a deep needs analysis? We've worked with the team at Stanford Biodesign to start building out this comprehensive needs analysis that we're prepared to make open source, so that innovators, potential innovators, could really see where it is. What if you had a clinical trial network so that if you were moved to generate evidence, that you could do it in a year or two instead of 5 years or more, and more. And, what if we improve the diagnosis rate, even in the womb, such that mom ended up at the right place when her child was born?
Yeah.
So many things that we really think we can make a big difference on, and it's going to take a lot of partnerships to make it happen, but we're going after that hard.
It feels like, Mike, it's a lot like a startup or building a new business, right? That you're trying to build a new business to really impact a disease state where there's not as great an innovation as you would like to see. And so what are some of the lessons you learned from your time in business that you're kind of carrying over to the Alliance?
Well, there's a lot, but one of the surprises for me has been just how generous people have been in terms of helping us. And so whether it's physicians or colleagues that we've worked with in the past, or even the folks from McKinsey came and pitched in, Peter Pfeiffer giving his time and his team. We have the FDA's raise their hand and say, hey, can we help you guys? And so it's been unexpected. We've just seen a lot of folks that have really been willing to put their hand up and say, we'll help. Right. And so we're trying to get that organized right now. But it is all the business stuff that you say.
Right.
I mean, we know what it takes to change the practice of medicine. It's not simple. Yeah. It's a big equation. And of course, you need to be listening to the patients and their families, but to have the physicians aligned, to have the regulators aligned, the payers aligned, folks that are running countries or systems aligned, that's a piece of work.
A lot of stakeholders.
A lot of stakeholders.
Right. So where do you sort of focus your time and attention initially? Is there a sort of a category of stakeholders where you really need to build support first, or how do you think about that?
It's kind of multifaceted. So we are building this out, but actually, this group here at AdvaMed could play a really big role in that. Not only does your staff expert at dealing with a lot of these big issues and creating a climate in which innovations can happen in a more reasonable fashion for this deserving group, but also the companies.
Right.
I mean, if you're really talking about deploying it in such a way that you have high quality products that get out into the hands of people and get people properly trained and using them and all that, that's it. You need companies to do that. So our idea is to jumpstart it with philanthropy, but to really turn it into a sustainable world. And the idea, we're going to work hard at trying to change the math so that people don't look at it and say, oh, it's small, it's hard, there's no real returns and so forth. And I think through a combination of efforts, including co-investing, we should be able to take the risk out, squeeze the time, make a difference. And so we're going to be serious about that. Any of you that have ideas about, you want to get into CHD treatments or out of CHD treatments or, somehow participate, let us know.
Yeah. The role of federal regulators and federal payers as well, right? You have a lot of experience at Edwards. Mm-hmm. When you were at AdvaMed, not only as chair, but after you were chair, very focused on creating the right regulatory environment and the right payment environment as well. Mm-hmm. Is that something you're thinking about as well at this stage relative to
Big
CHD?
Time.
Okay.
Big time.
Yeah.
Right. What we need to be is specific.
Yeah.
Right. So right now we're still in the arm waving phase, and we need to get very specific about what really will make a difference.
Yeah. I also want to take a little time tonight to let others ask questions. Mike and I can sit here for a long time and have a conversation, but a lot of you, I think, would love to ask Mike a question or two about his journey that might impact where you are as well. But let me shift, Mike, real quickly to sort of the personal side. You've had an amazing career, but you've had a great partner alongside of you and Linda, right? Mm-hmm. And it's the two of you that really grew Edwards and built the passion and things that you really care about. Talk about how important that relationship is to making you achieve your goals or helping you achieve your goals.
Yeah, well, so I'm going to give relationship advice. This should be good. Linda said, oh, I can't wait to hear this. No, we have an amazing relationship. She's been so supportive of me every step of the way from the very beginning, and we have a great time together, and we laugh out loud together every day, and we're real partners in doing what we're doing. But just on a bigger picture, it's something we've been together for a very long time, and we're very close. We have so many shared memories. But I don't know how to give advice to this group. You guys are all business people. You can always take a business-like approach to your relationships, and so do what we do in business. So if things aren't going right, you have a sit-down discussion, and you just talk about performance improvement, and then yeah, and you give your spouse credit for the things that they're good at, and talk about their opportunities for improvement. And then you do regular monitoring.
So basically, you do an annual review with Linda, or does she do it with you? What is it?
No, I actually haven't tried this at home, but you should try it.
Okay. Oh, that's great. That's great. But Linda also shares your passion on the philanthropic side, right?
Big time.
You're both very focused on congenital heart disease, but you're also both very focused, as you mentioned earlier, on your family issues with Down syndrome. Can we go back to that a little bit and talk about your passion and your path for kids with Down syndrome and adults too?
Yeah, and probably in a lot of ways that probably inspired both of us as we compare notes about why we're sort of lean toward being philanthropic. You can imagine when Linda's mom and my mom had their sons, you're going back to late 40s, early 50s, the prospects weren't really great, and the messages they got from doctors were horrible.
Yeah.
And they just decided that they were just not gonna capitulate.
Yeah.
So then they were determined to give their sons a better life and to do the same for others that were like them. And they organized the other parents and formed associations and find ways for them to, get to school and be able to even have a job and have someplace to live as adults and have a social life. And it wasn't a big money thing. They were doing it with bake sales and lemonade stands and that kind of thing. And so it was very impressive. They really reoriented their life just to be givers, and we saw the benefit of that.
Yeah.
We ended up with just living in this unbelievably loving household, and you get to feel the power of giving.
Right.
Giving is cool.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And it brings a lot of joy and happiness to your life, right?
Big time.
As well.
Yeah.
Let's open it up. Anyone have a question for Mike? Is there a mic circulating around? A microphone circulating around? Back in the back. Yep.
Mike, number one, thank you for everything you've done for the industry. Personally, you may not remember this story, but when I first met you at the MedTech Conference in 2016, I think I walked up to you, I still didn't know what my business was or what my technology was doing. And I said, "Hi Mike, I'm Venk." And I said, "Mr. Mussallem." And you leaned forward and you pulled my badge and you said, "We're peers." Mm. I want you to know that you said that to me. And ever since then, you've been a mentor and a big brother. And I want to say that on behalf of the early stage community, that you always responded to emails and texts and helped me in any way I can. So number one, thank you on that. Number two, I love the story of your history and when you spun out, because I think a lot of us in the early stage community, we always start with blue ocean. We're like, our technology is this good, we can do everything. And many of us don't get to a point of building a real business. And I've been in this now 9-10 years, and what was that point for you when, like TAVR, as Scott alluded to, like, how did you choose it? Like, if you could walk us through sort of, it may not have been the most exciting, but what was the delta that you were making between business, economics, innovation, excitement, all of that?
Yeah, thank you. I don't know when I sort of that really hit me that focus mattered, but focus was a very big thing. If you don't focus, just placing small bets around, I don't know how that works out as a successful business strategy. And so here we were pursuing several things. Several looked interesting, but at some point you had to make a choice. Yeah. I felt like you had to make a choice and say, what's it going to be and where are you going to put your chips? And we did that. And thank goodness, it worked out. It might not have, but I'm really a believer in the power of focus. I don't think, I don't know how companies do it that are so diversified that they do everything. I wouldn't be the right guy to do something like that. But when you get totally focused on a group of patients and a particular technology, I think you have a much better opportunity of really making a difference.
Yeah, very good. Another question for Mike? This crowd is not easily intimidated, Mike, but I think you might have. Yeah, right over here, Vince.
Yep.
So, Mike, you led the industry association at a very, very difficult time as Obamacare was coming together. And so, could you talk a little bit about that experience and how that changed you as a person and as a leader? Because it was tough to do.
Yeah. So that was a pretty interesting time. So I was the chairman of AdvaMed at the time, and a letter came in to me and to AdvaMed that said, we have a plan, we're going to change the course of healthcare in the United States, we're going to bend the cost curve $2 trillion, and we'd really like you to be in the White House next Tuesday. And I'm like, wow, I've never seen trillion in a sentence at that point, So anyway, you go into the White House and they had us represented. They had the leader of pharma. They had the leader of the unions. They had the leader of the hospital association. They had the leader of the AMA. So there were like 6 of us lined up. And then on the other side of the table was President Obama and his key staffers. And so it was, Larry Summers, who was the economic advisor, and Nancy Ann DeParle and Rahm Emanuel and all that. And anyway, that gang got together, and they basically laid out what they were going to announce, which is the Affordable Care Act. And they said, we need you in this thing. And so that turned out to be quite an experience. Actually, there's a funny story that's associated with it, because when went into that, they had a meeting in the Roosevelt room, and they make you check your phone and everything at the door because security. But so they were going to let each of us speak for a minute. When they got to me, I said, we're the medical technology industry. We're not part of the problem. We're part of the solution. And let me show you. And I pulled a little glasses case out of my pocket and opened it up, and I had a little sapien valve and a little catheter and so forth in there. And I started telling them, how this is going to work, and this is how, our industry can just transform things, and you want to be able to harness our industry. And Obama says, let me see that thing. And, Peter Orszag said, how much does that thing cost? Rahm Emanuel says, how the hell did you get that thing in here? So anyway, it was pretty funny. But we went on, and we couldn't come up with a good way of contributing to the trillions of dollars, so the federal government decided, well, that'll be easy, we'll just put a tax on them.
Yeah.
And then it started as a big tax, and we fought like crazy to get it down. And our executive committee, we probably met twice a week. We were meeting on Saturdays. It was ridiculous. Mm-hmm. We were panicked going through this. None of us were prepared for that, and we did it. But that group stayed together. It was a group. It had every opportunity to fragment us. But that didn't happen. We stuck together as a team. We fought together. And lost, and eventually came back,
won.
And eventually won. But it was a character building experience. Yeah.
Leading a trade association is not an easy job when you're a chair, right? I mean, you have your own interest and your own company you have to focus on, but then you have the responsibility of guiding the entire industry, which may not always align with your own interest, right, Mike? It's not an easy task.
No, that's true. I remember the very beginning, my first couple of years at Edwards. I didn't go into AdvaMed right away because it was all hands on deck just to get the company floating and trying to move forward and so forth. But I thought it was interesting, and so came to AdvaMed just a couple of years after the beginning of Edwards, and wow, what a growth experience it was for me. I felt like I learned so much and gained so much from just being around my industry peers. All those things that I thought were only my problems was everybody else's problems too. And when we worked together on those, it was amazing. And not only did we take on big, tough issues, but man, we made some good friends.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about in the room tonight, we had a heck of a fun time doing all that tough stuff. And so this was an amazing experience for me.
Yeah, and we're grateful for the time you spent with us for sure. Another question, then I've got a couple more, Mike, and we'll wrap up. Any other questions? All right, so let me ask you this. If you look back over the course of your career, is there a single accomplishment that you're sort of most proud of or you reflect on?
I don't know. I mean, the easy one is to say, hey, we touched 1 million patients with the transcatheter valve technology and so forth, and that's very true. But if I go back to my early career and I talk about something that was personally satisfying, maybe not so visible from the outside, I mentioned when I first joined Baxter, I was really nervous about coming into healthcare. My first job was this particular project, and at this point, Baxter was making lots of fluids, and these were fluids. In some cases, they were used in irrigation bottles, and so Baxter would sell millions of those per year that were used in surgery and so forth. But the price of oil had gone through the roof, and so it was getting very expensive to be able to do this. And the way that we used to run the plants is you used to have to keep all the water above 180 degrees Fahrenheit at all time. And so the engineering project, which was spun by microbiologists who said, if you can make sure that no drop of water in the system ever gets more than 24 hours old, and make sure every piece of pipe and tank in the system sees sanitizing temperature for 15 minutes, we can keep it clean and we can do it with low energy. And so that became my engineering project. And so that was kind of a fun project to take on. And the first place to implement it was in Cleveland, Mississippi, which is deep in the Delta. And Cleveland shut down for 2 months in July. And I can tell you that the boiler room in Cleveland, Mississippi in July is the hottest place on earth. So anyway, to do this project, you had to put in a lot of automatic valves and pumps and new tanks and so forth. And it was complex to run, and so you're going to need a programmable logic controller, a computer, to make it go, or as the good old boys down there called it, a computer.
Yeah.
And so we went and installed the thing and to make it happen. And it was kind of a kick. I mean, these guys were looking at it like, who is this kid? He's in his 20s. He's, we're from corporate. We're here to help you. Right? They've heard that before. But it was kind of a fun experience. I knew that the computer was going to break down from time to time, so we named it Lucille, and we put a little tape loop inside the thing, so whenever it broke down, Kenny Rogers would start singing, you pick the time, find time to leave me, Lucille. So anyway, we ended up making good friends with those guys, and it turned out to be a success. And so they threw a nice going away party for me, and I really felt fulfilled, and it probably gave me the confidence to dream big and do big things after that. They also gave me an Arkansas construction uniform, which they explained, which is a pair of bib overalls. But you wear that with nothing under it. It's the only way to stay cool.
It's good luck, huh? That's great. Is there a person, that's a great story, by the way. Is there a single person over the course of your lifetime that you look back on that had more influence on you than anybody else?
No, I know other people say yes. In my case, probably not. Certainly my parents had a big influence and so forth. When I think about my business career, it was probably for me more cherry picking. I feel like I learned from a lot of different people. And I learned a lot of interesting things from different folks. And so there were some people that were very meaningful, of course, and some of them are in this room. Yeah. But it was more of sort of crowdsourcing what I learned.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And let me close with this one. A room full of CEOs and senior executives who look up to you and admire your career in so many ways. What advice would you give those of us here who are sort of still on the journey in business and life?
Well, I'm not going to say that there's books written on this that are going to be more articulate than I am, but love what you do, right? Because if you love what you're doing and you're doing something that's meaningful, then the best is going to come out, and you're going to make a big difference in the world. I think you shouldn't underestimate your chance to really make a gigantic difference. We can do it. Each one of us can make a huge difference. And just have the confidence and the faith and go for it, because that's what we need. And don't be afraid to fail, because yeah, you're gonna fail. Is it gonna be easy? No, there's not a damn thing easy about it. It's hard as hell, but it's absolutely worth it because of what we do.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. That's great advice. And Mike, let me close with this. Thank you for years of service to Edwards, to the industry, for being a leader that we all can admire and look up to and respect. We're grateful for that. We're lucky that you're part of our lives. And thank you for being here tonight. And tomorrow's going to be a lot of fun.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Scott.
good.
Yeah, thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you. Appreciate you. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much.